Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education, featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host.
Hi everyone. Welcome to another tutoring tips episode of the Prepped and Polished podcast. It's Terri of Prepped and Polished. Please be sure to check out our website, www.preppedandpolished.com, for more info. While you're there, sign up for our free tutoring and test prep tips newsletter. It comes out monthly. For tutoring in person or online, call us 781-753-9951. You can join our Prepped and Polished community on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Prepped and Polished. You can submit a question during the show or after to radio@preppedandpolished.com. We love hearing from you. Let's get right to episode number 183 on what you need to know about the SSAT writing sample in the form of an essay. Even though the essay is not scored, it gives the school an overall impression of your maturity and power of self-expression. It gives the school a picture of the student. I realized the importance of the essay through a personal experience. I accompanied my son to a gathering for students admitted to a particular independent school. And an admission counselor came over to him and said, "We loved your essay. You're just the kind of student we want in our school." Well, that was not only nice to hear, but it was enlightening about the power and value of the essay. I hadn't realized that it was something that the admissions officer would remember, and it seemed to play a big role in his admittance. So the question becomes, how do you produce a winning essay? To prompts that are like, do we learn more from our mistakes than our successes? Or my fondest memory is. Or did a parent tell you to do something that you now wish you had done? Or sometimes they're a little more complicated. Should free speech on the internet be protected? Why or why not? Well, after reading many student samples, here are some of my suggestions to produce an effective, coherent, organized essay that, grabs some attention, because that, of course, is the goal. So this is really something that I've used, 6 traits of good writing. I've used it when teaching students in a classroom. I've used it with tutoring. And it really makes a difference if students incorporate these into their writing. The first is ideas, and that is the main theme or heart of the essay. A student needs to take a minute and brainstorm some ideas before they start writing, or they get kind of stuck in the middle of the essay and then it's too late. Ideas would encompass meaningful details, examples, fully developed thoughts, a narrowed focus. In other words, the student has to stick to the topic and not go off on all kinds of tangents. The next trait is organization. A student should make a brief outline before they start writing, using bullets, etc. It's really just for their eyes only, but it's, well-ordered details. A student wants a logical pattern of ideas to emerge. And, they should use 3 paragraphs. I've read many essays, samples, where, it's just all one block. And it makes it almost not as inviting to read. Voice really means bringing the topic to life. Does the writing sound like the student? Each student's personal tone and flavor, their feelings and convictions. The feelings and convictions of the writer should come out through the words. The student should think, how do I want my readers to feel? And of course, the essay has to be appropriate for the audience, the topic, the purpose. I've read a few samples and I really wondered why the student chose that particular topic to write about or idea. Sometimes it really showed them in a very negative light, or it was just too dark, just not something that, showed their best qualities. Sentence fluency is another trait that has to do with rhythm and flow of the language. A student should consider, did I use sentences that begin in different ways? Did I use some short and some long sentences? Are the sentences smooth? That's really very important so that it just doesn't get bogged down. The next trait is word choice. That I think is so important. It's one of the hardest for students to show that they have a rich vocabulary and minimal redundancy. They tend to repeat words over and over. Words should convey intended meaning in a precise, interesting, and natural way. It has to sound like the student. I had one student who wrote about a trip to the beach in Europe, and she really overused the colorful vocabulary to the point that, it just didn't even sound like her, and she missed an opportunity to write about some of the important elements of her trip. The language has to suit the topic and the audience. It can't be too informal either. The goal is to be powerful and engaging. And then, of course, we come to conventions, sometimes called the conventions of standard written English, and that's really the mechanics: spelling, paragraphing, grammar usage, punctuation, use of capitals. Those are important too. All of it makes the writing sample easier to read. Every student should leave a few minutes to proofread and correct their errors neatly, because the readability of the text, the presentation, is very important. If it's not legible, it just really takes away from the enjoyment of reading that essay. I always advise students to read editorials in the newspaper, online, and they can see how good writers argue their opinions, organize their thoughts, and how they use good examples. I think if students incorporate those traits of good writing into their SSAT writing sample, they can't help but produce, an effective SSAT writing sample. Well, this wraps up our show, episode number 183, on what you need to know about the SSAT writing sample, the regular prompt. Be on the lookout for our next podcast, episode number 184, which will be our next interview with an educational expert. Remember to access all of our podcast episodes. Go to www.preppedandpolished.com/podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.